It began inside the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, a vast circular hall floating in the void above the golden planet of Heraxis Prime, where banners of 100 alien worlds shimmered in the air like living streams of light, each representing a species that once claimed to be civilized, fair, and united. But tonight their laughter told a different truth. Tonight they laughed at a small blue world that dared to stand among them. A world they had always seen as young, naive, too emotional to survive among the stars, Earth. The Terran ambassador stood alone at the center of the chamber, a single figure wrapped in dark gray formal robes with the emblem of Earth gleaming faintly across his chest, his eyes calm, his face unreadable, even as the echo of alien amusement rippled through the chamber, 1,000 voices blending into one cruel song. Holographic reporters floated in the air, translating every word into 100 languages, feeding the galaxy with another episode of humiliation. Another scene where Earth would once again look weak, too soft for the brutal politics of the cosmos. But this time, the silence that followed wasn't fear, it was something far colder. The ambassador's voice broke the laughter, soft, even polite. The Terran Confederation extends humanitarian aid to the colonies of Varel, Zaan, and Velth, he said, his words carefully measured, his tone without pride. We offer food, medicine, and transport ships to rescue your civilians caught in conflict. We ask for no payment, no alliance, only peace. The aliens stared, some with mock sympathy, others shaking their heads as though pitying a lost child. The representative of the Dranith Dominion, a scaled creature with golden eyes, let out a low hissing laugh. Humans still think kindness wins wars, he sneered, leaning forward, his teeth glinting under the blue light. Peace is a luxury, Terran, not a strategy. A ripple of laughter followed him, echoed by creatures with tentacles, by metallic diplomats whose voices crackled with static amusement, by winged delegates whispering to one another behind jeweled masks. The ambassador did not move, did not argue. He simply nodded once, a small, almost human smile flickering at the edge of his mouth. Perhaps, he said softly, but peace does not require permission. His tone carried a weight that few noticed, a subtle current beneath the calm sea of his words, and for a brief second the Dranitha's grin faltered, though he quickly recovered, waving a claw dismissively. Naive, another alien muttered. Humans always talk of peace, yet their history is nothing but war. They burn worlds and call it mercy. The council roared with laughter again, and the holo cameras zoomed in on the ambassador's face, expecting anger, shame, maybe even tears. But they found none. Only a stillness that seemed unnatural, as if a storm were waiting behind his eyes. Outside the chamber, beyond the shining walls of the capital, Earth's relief ships waited in orbit, their hulls painted white, marked with the blue insignia of the Terran Humanitarian Fleet. Within them, men and women worked quietly, unaware that their offer of help had already been turned into a joke across the networks. We'll still deliver the supplies, the captain of one freighter said, his voice steady. Because people are starving, and we don't do this for them, we do it because it's right. That was humanity's way, the galaxy thought, always helping, always hoping. But deep within Earth's leadership, in the silent halls of the United Terran Council, others watched the broadcast with unflinching eyes. The Prime Director, an older woman named Helena Veris, leaned forward in her chair as the alien laughter filled the chamber, her face unreadable. They still think we're playing their game, she said quietly, her advisors silent around her. Let them. For generations, humanity had worn a mask of peace. They had called it diplomacy, progress, unity. But those who remembered Earth's history knew it was something else, a test of patience. The galaxy thought humanity had grown soft after the Great Exodus, when Earth's fleets were disbanded, when their weapons were mothballed and their soldiers turned to farmers and scientists. The truth was simpler, colder, and far more dangerous. They had never stopped preparing. Beneath the oceans of Earth lay hidden arsenals powered by quantum cores. Under the deserts of Mars slept fleets of silent warships buried in red dust, their hulls humming faintly with dormant AI consciousness. And on the far side of Luna, a massive structure known only as the Veil remained cloaked from alien eyes, its purpose known to no one outside the Terran High Command. Humanity had learned long ago that survival was not about loud threats. It was about waiting for the right moment to stop pretending. Back in the Grand Chamber, The ambassador's presentation concluded to polite applause, though the sarcasm was heavy in the air. As he turned to leave, one alien delegate called out mockingly, "Tell your people to enjoy their illusions, Terran. The galaxy does not bow to kindness." The ambassador paused at the door, looking back once, his expression unchanged, his voice calm. "We never asked you to bow," he said. "We just hoped you'd stand." Then he walked away, and the chamber fell silent for a moment before the laughter resumed, louder than before. But that small silence, that fleeting instant of quiet unease, was noticed by a few old species in the room, the Varn elders, who had once fought humanity during the Dawn Wars. They had seen that same stillness before, the same calm before the fire. One of them whispered to his aide, "They are pretending again." In the following weeks, Earth's aid convoys departed anyway, traveling through the outer sectors to deliver supplies. Many were intercepted, attacked by pirate fleets hired by corrupt council members who didn't want humanity's reputation for compassion spreading. The human ships never fired back, never retaliated, even when their crews were captured or their cargo stolen. Instead, the survivors sent one message back to Earth: "We will not break the code." Across human colonies, people watched in anger as the galaxy mocked them again. "They take our kindness for weakness," a soldier murmured on Titan's ice base. His commander replied softly, "Let them laugh. They have no idea what we've become." For all its power, the galaxy had forgotten what humanity truly was. They had forgotten the centuries of war that shaped Earth's history, the resilience of a species that survived extinction, famine, and nuclear fire. They forgot that the same hands that built hospitals had once built weapons that shattered moons. And while the Council mocked, humanity remembered. In universities, old war strategists began teaching again under false names. In shipyards across Mars and Ganymede, construction workers began receiving special orders marked under civilian research. In the frozen rings of Saturn, a dormant signal pulsed once, then fell silent again. Earth's kindness was never weakness, it was camouflage. Meanwhile, on the Council's media channels, debates flared. Some alien leaders demanded humanity be banned from further humanitarian projects. "They are destabilizing the balance," one said, "they make us look corrupt." Others mocked their technology as outdated, claiming Earth could never threaten the great empires of the stars. But among the military factions, quiet conversations began to spread, whispers that Earth's silence was not normal. "No reaction," a Zell commander said during a briefing, "that's not human." His superior laughed, "Maybe they finally learned to behave." The commander shook his head slowly. "No, humans don't forget. They wait." The Terran ambassador continued to attend meetings, always polite, always calm. He listened, he smiled, and when asked why Earth continued sending supplies to those who insulted them, he replied simply, "Because it's what we do." Yet behind his diplomatic smile, encrypted signals traveled across subspace. Short messages written in code so old only Terran military archives could read them. They carried simple instructions: prepare the veil. Activate silent protocols. The galaxy would not understand those words. Not yet. On Earth itself, the mood was different. The people still believed in peace, still supported their government's humanitarian goals, but they also remembered the price of being mocked, of being underestimated. News feeds filled with footage of burning Terran freighters, of aid workers dying on alien soil. Protests erupted across cities, demanding justice. But the government stayed silent, and silence was more frightening than anger. In the night skies over Earth, strange lights appeared briefly, like faint auroras, then vanished. The media dismissed them as atmospheric distortions. Only the few who worked in the upper layers of command knew the truth. Those lights were the reactivation of orbital sentinels, systems that hadn't been used since the Age of Fire. In the shadows, humanity's oldest instincts stirred. Not vengeance, not hatred, something deeper. The survival of the species. The galaxy believed humans had become soft, moral, predictable. But beneath every human smile was the memory of fire, of cold nights, of ancestors who had clawed their way up from extinction again and again. Earth's kindness had always been a choice, not a weakness. And when that choice was mocked, when mercy was twisted into humiliation, the mask began to crack. Back in the council hall, the Dranith delegate gave another public statement. Humans must learn their place, he hissed before the reporters. They are fortunate we allow them in this chamber at all. The video went viral, spreading through the galaxy's networks in hours. Millions laughed. But some didn't. A few alien scholars, historians who studied humanity's past, watched the recording in silence. They pulled up archives of Earth's ancient wars, wars where humans fought entire coalitions and won. You don't humiliate a species like that, one scholar whispered, not unless you want history to repeat itself. His student frowned. But they've changed, haven't they? The elder looked out at the stars. No one changes that much. That night, as the council celebrated another vote stripping Earth of trade rights, something strange happened. Every system in the chamber flickered for exactly 7 seconds. Lights dimmed, holograms blinked, data feeds stuttered. Then everything returned to normal. Engineers dismissed it as a power fluctuation. But somewhere deep inside the council's network, a dormant protocol was awakened, an old human security key buried within their own archives from the early age of galactic communication. No one noticed it, not yet. It was only a spark, hidden beneath layers of code. But that spark belonged to humanity. The ambassador returned to his quarters that night, the laughter still echoing faintly from the chamber. He stood before the viewport, watching the council's shining capital below, a world of light and pride. His reflection in the glass looked tired but calm. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small silver pin shaped like a broken chain, the insignia of the old Terran Defense Force. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he tapped his communicator once, sending a silent signal to the far side of the galaxy. A single word appeared on screens buried deep beneath Earth's crust, in black and red letters, confirmed. The next morning, the galaxy woke to news of yet another Terran relief ship destroyed. The council blamed pirates. The networks mocked Earth again. But this time, the Terran ambassador did not respond. He didn't attend the meeting. He didn't send messages. He was gone. No one saw the human delegation leave the planet. No ship filed a departure request. The docks reported nothing missing. It was as if they vanished. And that was the day the laughter began to sound hollow. Because somewhere out there, beyond the scanners, beyond the council's control, Earth's silence had turned into motion. Deep within the dark oceans of Earth, beneath the Antarctic ice, engines long thought buried began to hum. In orbit, satellites turned their sensors toward the stars, recalibrating. Across Mars, encrypted frequencies flickered alive after a century of quiet. Humanity's kindness had ended. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but something ancient had awakened. The Grand Chamber remained unaware, still echoing with arrogance and laughter. They thought they had humiliated a young species that didn't understand power. But power had never been about strength alone. It was about knowing when to stop smiling. Humanity had smiled for a very long time. And as the stars outside shimmered, cold and silent, the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when kindness would end and the real nature of mankind would finally return. The silence that followed Earth's humiliation was not the silence of defeat but of decision. Across the solar system a strange stillness spread like a shadow, no announcements. No protests, only quiet preparation. Deep beneath the clouds of Jupiter the Terran outpost named Alio's base flickered to life after a century of dormancy. Corridors long sealed filled with the sound of footsteps as old soldiers and new recruits moved through the cold metal halls. The red emergency lights bathed their faces in colorless glow, and the air smelled of dust and awakening machines. Admiral Rourke stood before the ancient command table. His voice low but sharp. The council burned. Our aid ships killed our people and called it politics. They think our silence means surrender. They're wrong. Behind him holographic screens showed wreckage of relief vessels, human insignias twisted and charred in space, thousands of names scrolling across the lower band. The admiral clenched his jaw. For every ship they mocked, for every life they laughed at, we will show them what mercy becomes when patience dies. On Earth the Prime Director stood before the window of the Terran Council Tower, her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes on the night sky that no longer looked peaceful, Her advisors whispered questions. Should we respond publicly? Should we summon the ambassadors? But Helena Veris simply said, no, not yet. The galaxy expects noise. Let them choke on our silence. Her reflection in the glass looked older, harder. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had buried too many good intentions. She turned and faced the chamber of leaders, men and women from every colony, their faces uncertain. We gave them food, they burned it. We offered peace, they called it weakness. But we are done pretending to be civilized in a universe that laughs at compassion. Kindness was our shield. Now it becomes our weapon. The room fell silent. The only sound was the distant hum of the orbital defense grid coming online for the first time in 50 years. In the outer colonies, rumors began to spread. Trade routes near the Orion Fringe went dark. Alien freighters reported strange signals following them. Whispers said human ships were moving unseen, invisible to scanners, moving like shadows through the void. The Council dismissed it as fearmongering. Earth doesn't have that kind of technology. One analyst laughed on live broadcast. They can barely maintain their colonies. But in the same hour his feed was hacked for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough for a simple phrase to appear across every network. Glowing in stark white letters, we tried peace. The message vanished immediately, but it was enough to send tremors through the diplomatic circuits. And though officials claimed it was a hoax, every government ordered higher security within the next hour. On Mars, in the underground shipyards beneath Olympus Mons, engineers worked in silence as enormous hangar doors slowly opened to reveal black warships half buried in red dust. Vessels older than most living species. Their hulls marked with faded numbers and warning sigils. One worker whispered, "I thought these were dismantled." Another replied, "They were supposed to be." As the lead foreman entered the hangar, a thin man with steel-gray hair, he said quietly, "They were never dismantled. Only hidden. Because we knew one day kindness would fail." The ships came alive like sleeping beasts, lights running down their spines, reactors humming softly. The sound was almost like breathing. The first fleet of the Veil project had awakened. Far beyond the colonies, a Council surveillance drone drifted near the edge of Sol space, scanning, transmitting, recording, and for a moment it captured something impossible, a distortion, a shimmer like heat over ice, then static, then nothing. When technicians tried to replay the footage, all they heard was a faint human voice whispering, "Stand by." Before the feed went black, they blamed equipment failure, but 2 days later the station went offline entirely, leaving only silence. Back in the Grand Chamber, the alien delegates gathered again, debating how to discipline Earth for its insolence. The Dranith representative hissed, "We must enforce compliance, cut their resources, isolate their colonies, crush their spirit." Others nodded, laughing about how easily the humans would beg once hunger spread. "They are sentimental creatures, ruled by emotion." One alien said, "They will kneel before logic." But beneath the table, hidden from their scanners, the floor vibrated. Faintly for less than a second, unnoticed by all except one Van Elder whose people had fought humans long ago. His skin went pale, his breathing shallow. He whispered to his assistant, "Do you feel that? That sound is not power, it's movement." Meanwhile, the Terran ambassador who once stood humiliated in that same hall sat aboard a quiet transport ship crossing the dark side of the moon. The stars beyond the viewport looked colder now. His hands rested on a sealed case containing a small data crystal. The final diplomatic report he would ever file. His companion asked softly, "Sir, are we truly ending the talks?" The ambassador stared at the stars for a long moment before answering. "We're not ending them. They ended themselves the moment they laughed at mercy. Now we will speak in the only language they understand." And with that he placed the crystal into the ship's core and pressed confirm. The data scattered across thousands of hidden relays. A message that simply read, "Protocol Veil activated." In the deep laboratories beneath the Pacific, scientists gathered around black monitors as encrypted signals poured in. The oldest among them, Dr. Kasim Ree, removed his glasses slowly and murmured, "So it begins." A younger technician looked nervous. "Doctor, this project was meant to be hypothetical." The man's eyes were cold. "Nothing about humanity has ever been hypothetical. We plan peace, but we prepare for storms." The screens flashed with ancient codes, activation logs from centuries ago. Every dormant weapon system, every defense AI, every stealth satellite, all coming online as one heartbeat. Across the oceans, whales sang nervously as frequencies changed, deep currents stirred, and the planet's magnetic field shimmered faintly in response. Even nature could sense the awakening. On Titan Base, soldiers gathered in the old mess hall, the air thick with tension. One young recruit whispered, "Do you think Earth will really fight the Council?" His commander, a woman with scars down her neck, stared into her drink before replying, "No, not fight, teach." He frowned. "Teach." She nodded slowly. "They need to remember who we are, not the smiling diplomats they mocked, but the descendants of every survivor who ever refused to die." The room fell silent. Outside the windows the gas giant glowed orange and gold, and somewhere beneath that storm human ships began to form up, black silhouettes moving in perfect silence. In the Council's intelligence division, data analysts tried to piece together strange disappearances, shipping logs that didn't match, colonies that went dark, but their computers began glitching, names replacing data, names of the Terran dead from the destroyed age ships scrolling endlessly until one frightened officer shouted, "Shut it off." But the screens didn't stop. Instead a final line appeared, "We remember." Within minutes, their systems crashed, all power lost, and an hour later their main archive station was found empty, every server erased. Admiral Rourke stood aboard the bridge of the warship Indomitable, his uniform old but clean, his eyes like steel. Before him a holographic image of Earth rotated slowly, blue and calm. He said softly, "For generations we believed in peace. We believed that kindness could reshape the stars, but they took that kindness and trampled it. So now we will show them what comes after patience." An officer saluted, "Orders, sir?" The admiral's gaze hardened. "Mobilize the fleet under the veil. We strike. Only when they cross the line, but we make sure when they do, there will be no second chances." The order spread like wildfire, silent and unseen, through encrypted networks that even the Council could not trace. Every Terran captain received it with the same quiet understanding. The time of pretense was over. The Council still celebrated its control, throwing banquets, giving speeches, believing they had crushed the last spirit of Earth. But fear began to creep through the lower ranks. Strange rumors whispered in the corridors. Ghost fleets seen in dark space, comms interference near the human borders. Some swore they heard music in the static, faint and haunting, the melody of an old Terran lullaby, the kind sung before battle centuries ago. No one could explain it, and the more they ignored it, the stronger it grew. In a distant corner of the galaxy, near the dead system of Tyen, a small alien mining ship picked up a massive energy spike. Scanners showed a formation emerging from subspace. Hundreds of objects moving in perfect silence, heat signatures unreadable. The captain stared in horror. "Those aren't asteroids," he whispered, "those are ships." Before he could transmit, his feed went dark, but one frame remained frozen on the recorder. A black vessel shaped like a spear, with a single line of light, running down its hull like a heartbeat. And on that light burned a word in Terran standard, "Veil." The galaxy continued laughing for a few more weeks, mocking Earth's disappearance from political forums. But beneath that laughter trembled something they could not name. Something old and human that had begun to rise again. The kind of stillness that comes before storms. The kind of quiet that holds fire beneath it. And when the stars over Sol flickered that night, the universe itself seemed to take a breath, because kindness had ended, and what was coming would no longer smile. The galaxy had grown used to Earth's silence. The Council's broadcasts mocked it daily. News anchors joked that humanity had finally accepted its place at the bottom of the chain. Politicians smiled smugly, congratulating themselves for putting the Terran problem to rest. But in the dark between the stars something had changed. Ships traveling near the old Terran borders began to vanish, not explode, not transmit distress calls, simply vanish. Their signals cut in mid-transmission. Their engines dead. Their hulls never found. One moment they were there, the next only static filled the void. Entire fleets disappeared without a trace. And though the Council blamed pirates, mercenaries, or gravitational storms, those who had once fought humanity centuries ago whispered a single word in fear: Revenant. Because they remembered how humans returned from defeat before, quiet, patient, and merciless. In the military academies of the Council's core worlds, cadets laughed at the idea that humans could threaten them. Their instructors dismissed old Terran war stories as myths, but some old officers, veterans of forgotten border wars, felt unease they couldn't explain. They had seen what human persistence looked like, how they rebuilt cities from ash, how they learned faster than any other species, how even when dying they refused to stop moving forward. It wasn't rage that frightened them. It was that quiet determination that had no end. and now that silence had returned. Weeks passed and still no sign of Earth. Every probe sent toward the Sol system simply vanished. Sensors showed static, maps glitched, even time signatures broke. It was as if the system itself had folded inward, sealed from sight. The Council's scientists called it a dimensional mirage. But no one could explain how it was done, not even the oldest species with their millennia of technology, and that frightened them. Because if humanity had learned to hide an entire system, then what else had? They learned in their quiet years. The question hung in the air, unspoken but heavy, until one night the Council's border colonies near the Orion went dark. 3 planets, 2 stations, 100,000 lives, gone, without explosions or warnings, only a strange hum recorded on their last logs, a rhythmic sound, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat. Inside the Council's war chamber chaos reigned. Voices shouted over each other, trying to explain the unexplainable. The Dranith delegate slammed his claws against the table. It must be pirates. But his trembling voice betrayed fear, or another empire's weapon. Someone suggested, yet no empire claimed responsibility, no transmission, no demand, just silence, until one screen flickered alive, showing a single image captured before the last station vanished. A shadow in space, vast and formless, but at its center glowed a faint blue light. And from that light came a transmission only 2 words long. Spoken in human language, "We're home." The sound was calm, emotionless, yet beneath it was something that made even the hardened generals shift uneasily. Because it didn't sound like anger, it sounded like inevitability. Back on Earth, deep beneath the oceans where the Veil network pulsed with life, operators watched the Council's confusion unfold across intercepted channels. One of them turned to his commander. "They think it's pirates," he said. The commander, a quiet woman with pale eyes, replied, "Good, let them guess. The longer they laugh, the closer we get." Her gaze moved across a holographic map showing hundreds of small red lights blinking across the galaxy. Each one a hidden Terran fleet, a ghost. Armada positioned in silence, waiting for one command. Humanity had vanished only to reappear everywhere at once. The Admiral of the Veil Fleet sent out a coded message. Phase 2 begins, no public contact, no mercy if fired upon, observe until the first strike. The message traveled faster than light, carried by subspace corridors no alien could detect, reaching ships hidden behind moons, within asteroid fields, even beneath alien stations themselves. For years humanity had lived among the stars pretending to be simple colonists, engineers, workers, diplomats, but many of them had been soldiers. Observers, watchers waiting for the call. And when the call came they didn't cheer, they didn't celebrate, they simply prepared. The first Council fleet sent to investigate the Orion disappearance arrived with confidence, 300 ships strong, armed with the best technology of the galaxy. Led by the proud Zell Admiral known for his arrogance, he broadcasted his arrival across all frequencies, mocking Earth as he advanced. "If you can hear me, Terrans, come out and beg, your kindness has cost enough lives." But no one answered, only silence filled the void. Then slowly the stars around his fleet began to fade, one by one, as if the light itself was being swallowed. "Sensor malfunction," an officer shouted. But then their screens went black. The Admiral turned toward the main viewport and froze. A massive shape moved between the stars, impossible in scale, stretching miles long, no energy readings, no heat, only the faint outline of metal and shadow, and then a single beam of blue light cut across the fleet, silent, clean, final. Their ships never even had time to scream, and when rescue teams arrived days later, they found nothing but drifting dust, every trace erased. The Council called an emergency session. Fear replaced laughter. "We're dealing with a superweapon," one delegate cried, "or an ancient species," another argued. "The humans don't have this power." But no one could deny the evidence. It was human design, Terran frequency, Terran signature, and for the first time in centuries the word Earth was spoken in the chamber without mockery, only dread. The Varn elder rose from his seat, his frail voice shaking. "You fools mocked them when they offered peace. You called them weak, but weakness is not their nature. Patience is, and patience is far more dangerous." The room fell silent. Even the arrogant Dranith said nothing, only the soft hum of the chamber's shields filled the air. Across the galaxy, propaganda machines tried to calm the people, claiming the rumors were exaggerated, that Earth was still powerless, that the disappearances were natural. But the common citizens began to doubt. Trade ships refused to travel near human sectors. Colonies fortified themselves. And in the shadows humanity watched, unseen, listening, waiting, their fleets drifting like ghosts, their signals coded in heartbeat rhythms, the same beat that now echoed in alien nightmares. On the outer rim, a group of miners from the Korth species stumbled upon a derelict ship, sleek, black, silent, its hull reflecting no light. They boarded it hoping for salvage, but inside they found no crew, only walls covered with carvings, names of human cities, Earth, Mars, Luna, all etched like memorials, and at the end of the corridor a single inscription burned into the metal: "We warned you." The miners fled, but none made it home. In the Terran command chamber, Admiral Rourke received the latest reports, his face grim. "The Council will react soon," his officer said. "They already have," Rourke replied, glancing at the map, "and every move they make brings them closer to us." He paused, looking at the Earth hologram. "We didn't want this war, but they made it, and now we'll end it so thoroughly that history will call it mercy." Far from him, on the moon base, technicians watched as the veil completed its formation. A massive cloak of energy surrounding the entire solar system. Invisible yet impenetrable. Not just a shield but a weapon that distorted time and detection. From the outside it looked like nothing. From the inside it was everything. Earth had become a ghost world, untouchable, unseen, a legend reborn. And yet, within that legend, the people of Earth lived their quiet lives. Children played under artificial skies, unaware of the fleets above. Farmers tilled the soil under new suns on terraformed colonies. And in every heart there was a quiet pride, not of vengeance, but of survival. Humanity had learned not to shout, not to boast, but to endure, and when endurance became power, there was no force that could stand against it. The Council would learn that soon, very soon, for the disappearance of Earth was not an act of retreat. It was the moment humanity decided to stop being part of the Council's story and begin writing its own. In the great void near the Carthen Nebula, a lone probe drifted through the dark, recording, transmitting, hoping to catch one glimpse of truth. For days it saw nothing, until one night it detected a faint light. A symbol floating in space, projected holographically. 3 words written in Terran standard glowing pale blue against the stars: "We are awake." Then the probe's systems shut down forever, leaving the galaxy in silence once more, the kind of silence that meant something vast was watching, something that remembered every insult, every cruelty, and was now deciding what came next. The night the human fleet returned, the galaxy changed forever. It began without fanfare, no broadcast, no warning, just a sudden stillness in the void that every sensor failed to explain. Patrol ships near the outer rim noticed a strange shimmer in space. Like light bending where nothing should bend, scanners glitched, compasses spun, and then from that shimmer came silence so deep it drowned the hum of the engines. One pilot whispered, "Is that a wormhole?" But before his words could finish, the stars disappeared, replaced by an ocean of darkness and movement. Black hulls sliding out of the void, sleek and angular. Their surfaces swallowing every reflection, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, no heat, no signature, only presence, and at their center floated a single warship larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. Its hull matte, its engines pulsing like a heartbeat. Across its side burned a single word in white light: retribution. The patrol never sent another message. When the Council received the first distress call, they dismissed it as malfunction, until 10 minutes later, 27 outer colonies went dark, then 40, then entire sectors. Communication lines collapsed one by one as if an invisible tide washed over them. And then a video feed appeared uninvited on every Council terminal, showing a distant system engulfed in blue fire, human ships moving with unnatural precision. No sound, no chaos, just cold efficiency, a formation of black vessels. Surrounding a Council dreadnought, disabling its engines, and then vanishing, leaving the ship adrift, its crew alive but terrified. Their recordings captured whispers in human voices over the comms. "For every hand that mocked us," and then static. The Council panicked, emergency meetings convened across the galaxy, generals shouting, ministers trembling, the Dranith delegate screamed, "They are attacking everything." But the Varn Elder only whispered, "No, they are not attacking, they are cleansing." And his words chilled the room because no one could deny it. Humanity wasn't waging war, they were dismantling an empire. In the dark command halls of Earth, Admiral Rourke stood before the projection of the galaxy. 1,000 red dots blinking as reports came in. Fleet Delta reports clean engagement. An officer said, "No casualties, Council fleet neutralized." Rourke nodded silently. "Good, continue under the veil, no transmissions. They must never know where we come from." His eyes were cold but not cruel. There was no joy in his tone, only purpose. "This is not vengeance," he said. "This is correction." Around him officers saluted quietly, and as he turned toward the window overlooking Earth, the planet shone calm and blue, unaware of the storm it had unleashed. Humanity had hidden its true nature for centuries, behind peace, behind diplomacy, behind words that made the galaxy comfortable. But now the masks were gone, and what rose beneath was something older than the Council itself, the instinct of survival sharpened by centuries of betrayal. Across the alien worlds, panic spread like wildfire. Propaganda networks tried to spin lies, claiming the attacks were random, that the humans were rogue factions, but everyone knew the truth. These strikes were precise, surgical, deliberate, no civilian targets, no chaos, just the quiet removal of power. Spaceports shut down. Weapon factories went offline. Entire intelligence grids erased without a single shot. Humanity wasn't conquering. They were erasing the systems that made cruelty possible. It was revenge dressed as justice, and justice that moved like a shadow. On the colony world of Tharek, the people woke to find every orbital defense drone shut down, their governors gone, their data wiped, and in the central square a single hologram projected the Terran emblem surrounded by soft blue light. The voice that followed was calm, human, and almost kind. "You mocked kindness, now learn what discipline looks like." And then the light faded, leaving only silence. The Council's war fleets tried to fight back, but every battle was the same. They never saw the enemy coming, radar silent, scanners blind, and when human ships appeared, it was already too late. They struck from subspace corridors unknown to any alien navigator. Their weapons leaving no radiation, no trace, just absence, ships cut apart as if erased from reality. And those few who survived told impossible stories of drones shaped like shadows, soldiers whose armor shimmered like glass, faces hidden behind mirrored visors that reflected only fear, and voices that spoke softly before the end. "We offered peace first." The alien generals couldn't understand it, how a species they once mocked could do this, how their ships could vanish into nothing, how their systems turned against them. But the answer lay within their own arrogance. They had given humanity decades of access to their technology, their structure, their codes, and the humans had learned, quietly, perfectly. Inside the Grand Chamber, the same hall where Earth had once been mocked, the laughter was gone, replaced by chaos, diplomats shouting, screens flashing with red alerts, and in the center of it all the Dranith delegate demanded annihilation. "We must destroy Earth, burn it to ash, before they destroy us." But the Varn elder spoke softly. "You cannot burn what you cannot find," and as if answering his words, the lights in the chamber flickered, once, twice, and then every holographic display went black, replaced by a single human face. The Terran ambassador who had once stood before them smiling as they laughed, his expression now calm but empty, his eyes cold. "You thought mercy was weakness," he said, his voice echoing in every language across every world. "You mistook restraint for fear. You forgot who we were, now you will remember." Behind him, through the feed, the vast silhouette of a fleet loomed, stretching across the stars. The signal cut out, and for the first time in galactic history the Council sat in complete silence. Across alien cities, people looked up at the night sky and saw strange glows, silent flashes as their orbiting defense satellites winked out one by one. No explosions, no fire, just absence. Like the stars themselves were being swallowed, and soon their networks collapsed. Communications died, panic gripped the streets, governments begged for help that never came. Because their fleets were gone, their weapons unresponsive, and in the midst of it all, humanity's name spread like a ghost story. Told in whispers, "The Terrans are coming," they said. And they do not shout, they do not rage, they simply arrive. But not every human celebrated. In command rooms across the Veil fleet, soldiers sat in silence after each mission. Some stared at the stars, others at their hands, haunted by what they were forced to become. One young pilot whispered, "We never wanted this." Her commander placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, but they chose it for us." And the girl nodded, tears glimmering under the cold blue lights of the warship, even in vengeance. Humanity carried its heart. and that heart made their wrath even more terrifying, because it wasn't driven by cruelty, it was driven by conviction, by the belief that if peace was to exist, those who mocked it must first understand what peace costs. The galaxy began to fracture, old alliances fell apart, species that once stood together turned on each other in fear, blaming one another for angering humanity, while others tried to reach out, sending desperate messages into the void, pleading for mercy, for dialogue, but no answer ever came, only the hum of the stars and the quiet echo of human engines moving unseen. And yet, somewhere deep in that silence, a different movement stirred. Small groups of aliens who once accepted Earth's help, who remembered human doctors, teachers, and builders, began lighting signals across their skies, symbols of hope, not fear, small blue lights shaped like the Terran emblem, as if saying, "We remember your kindness," and perhaps humanity saw them, for those worlds were spared, untouched by the invisible war. Back on Earth, the Prime Director watched it all unfold through encrypted feeds, her face lit by the glow of the holographic galaxy. Her aide asked, "When does it end?" She didn't answer at first, her gaze distant, her voice quiet when it came. "When they understand, not before." Outside her window the sky shimmered faintly, auroras glowing over continents, energy pulsing through the planetary shields. Earth looked peaceful again. But it was the peace of a blade sheathed only by choice. Humanity had stopped pretending, and the galaxy finally understood what it meant when a species built for war chose kindness. It meant mercy wasn't their limit, it was their restraint. In the ruins of a council communication relay, a survivor stumbled through the dark corridors, lights flickering, walls scorched, his hand trembling as he reached a control panel, trying to send a distress call, and then he froze. For on the wall above the console someone had written words in red light, words that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. "You taught us cruelty, we perfected patience." He fell to his knees, whispering the phrase again and again, as if trying to make sense of it. But there was no sense left, only consequence. And far above, in the dark between galaxies, the Terran Fleet sailed on, silent, endless, unstoppable, and in their wake the stars themselves seemed to bow, as if the universe remembered its oldest truth, that when humanity stops pretending to be civilized, nothing survives their resolve but silence. The Council's panic had become desperation, their fleets shattered, their pride gone, their voices trembling inside the same hall that once rang with laughter. Every wall that had echoed mockery now echoed fear. The delegates shouted over one another, demanding plans, demanding survival. But none of their words mattered anymore because outside, in the darkness beyond their homeworlds, the humans were already there, silent, patient, and watching. They weren't invading, they were judging, and every world that once mocked Earth waited to learn its verdict. The council leader, pale and sweating, slammed his hand on the table. "We must talk to them," he gasped, "we must beg for terms." But no one dared to speak the word surrender, because to admit that to the humans felt worse than death. Still, messages were sent, desperate, pleading, diplomatic in tone but soaked in fear, and yet no reply ever came, only the faint hum of the veil, that strange static that now haunted every frequency across the stars, a whispering sound that some swore resembled a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, human. In the streets of alien capitals, panic turned to collapse, markets crashed, governments fell, ships filled with refugees fled toward the core systems, hoping distance would protect them. But humanity wasn't chasing them. They weren't claiming planets or building empires. They were erasing control, one system at a time, destroying the infrastructure that allowed the Council to dominate weaker worlds, leaving people free but terrified. Because they couldn't tell if they had been spared or ignored, rumors spread fast. Some said Earth had unleashed AI gods that chose targets by guilt. Others said the humans could read thoughts, punishing intent instead of actions. And somewhere deep down every alien who had laughed at humanity wondered if the silence that surrounded them was forgiveness or the prelude to destruction. In one of the Council's command centers, an admiral wept as he watched his fleets vanish from the tactical display, not in explosions, but in quiet fades, entire divisions going dark. "They don't even enjoy it," he whispered. His second-in-command asked, "What?" And the admiral's voice broke. "The humans, they aren't killing in anger, they're doing it like maintenance." And that was the moment the galaxy understood that humanity's wrath was not born of hate, but of precision, and that was far worse, because hate ends when it burns out, But precision continues until the task is done. On Earth, in the dim light of the Terran command chamber, Prime Director Helena Veris sat surrounded by silent officers, their faces lit by holographic maps filled with flickering red, showing every fallen fleet, every silent world. They're panicking, one said. Their communication grids are collapsing, another added, shall we stop? But Helena's voice came soft, heavy. Not yet. Fear is the only language they ever respected, and we are only now teaching them to listen. She leaned forward, her eyes distant, her tone neither proud nor cruel, just tired. They mocked our mercy because they never believed it came from strength. Now they'll understand. Mercy without strength is invitation, but strength with mercy is control. Outside her window, the earth looked calm, clouds moving peacefully, cities glowing under the night sky. The world that the galaxy had called weak was now dictating the silence of stars. In a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a small council fleet tried to regroup, 5 ships, survivors from destroyed sectors. They hovered near a dying sun, waiting for orders that would never come. The captain of the flagship, an old alien whose species once traded freely with humans, stood staring at the void. We deserve this, he whispered. His crew looked at him in confusion. We betrayed them when they offered kindness. We joined the laughter when they offered help. And now their silence is our sentence. Before anyone could respond, sensors flared. Something was emerging from the darkness. One by one human ships appeared, black against the dying light. Surrounding the fleet like wolves circling prey, the captain raised his hands, voice trembling, we surrender. And the human fleet did not fire. Instead a single message appeared on his screen, you remember. You live. Then the ships vanished again, leaving the survivors floating in stunned silence. Proof that even in war, humanity chose who deserved to remain. In the Council's core world, chaos consumed the once proud capital. The skies filled with evacuating ships, the air thick with smoke, and then everything stopped. Every system went offline at once. Power died, lights faded, and a single hologram appeared above the city. It was not an attack, it was a message, the face of a human woman, calm, steady, eyes filled with quiet sorrow. We do not seek your extinction. Her voice echoed in every language. We seek your memory, so that no one ever mocks peace again. And then she vanished, leaving the city dark but intact. A mercy that terrified them more than destruction ever could. Meanwhile, deep within the veil, the Terran fleet floated in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting no light, only the faint glow of blue energy pulsing along their cores. Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his expression weary but resolute. We've dismantled their command structure, an officer reported. What remains are scattered colonies. Rourke nodded. Let them rebuild without chains. Another officer hesitated. Sir, history will call us monsters. Rourke's reply was almost a whisper. History is written by survivors, and we intend for them to survive wiser. In a distant system, far from any star, a small Terran scout ship drifted near an old battlefield, scanning debris from a council fleet. The young pilot looked at the wreckage and whispered, we didn't want this. Her co-pilot replied softly, no one ever does, but they chose it for us. The pilot closed her eyes, remembering the broadcasts of laughter, the sneers, the way they called Earth sentimental, and she whispered to herself, now they know what sentiment can become. She turned the ship toward home, toward the soft blue glow in the distance, and for the first time in a century, she smiled without guilt. In the ruins of the Grand Chamber, a lone delegate walked through the shattered halls, the floor covered in fragments of banners, the emblems of 100 worlds burned to ash, and on the central platform, carved into the metal, were words written by human hands, we asked for peace. You asked for proof. He fell to his knees, tears burning his eyes, whispering, you gave it. Above him, the sky shimmered faintly as human ships passed overhead, silent and unchallenged, no longer ghosts, but guardians of a new order built not on fear, but on understanding bought through pain. And so, as the dust settled across the stars, the galaxy began to rebuild, slower, quieter, humbled, the name of humanity no longer spoken with mockery, but with reverence and fear. Songs were written about the day the stars went silent. Children were taught that mercy is never weakness, that those who laugh at kindness invite judgment, and somewhere deep beneath the surface of Earth, Helena Veris looked out at the endless night and whispered to herself, We are not gods, we are reminders. And, in that moment, the universe understood what humanity had always known, that civilization without compassion is hollow, and compassion without power is fragile, but together, they are unstoppable. The galaxy was quiet now, too quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm that changed everything, the kind of silence that feels alive, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what would come next. Across the shattered sectors of the Council's empire, communication. Relays flickered weakly, their once glorious networks reduced to whispers, broken fragments of messages drifting through space. Do not resist them. They will not kill if you yield. One said, another pleading, humans have restored power to our cities, but we dare not speak. And though chaos had consumed everything, there was no more laughter, no more arrogance, only the strange, fearful respect that comes when the mighty finally see what they mocked. In the ashes of their pride, the Council's worlds were rebuilding under human supervision, not through conquest, but through quiet order. Terran engineers walked their streets, repairing systems they once sabotaged. Human doctors tended to alien children, and everywhere they went, the people bowed their heads, not out of fear of the humans' weapons, but out of awe for their restraint. For humanity had done something no empire ever could. They won without crowning themselves kings. They destroyed power without replacing it with tyranny, and that made them terrifying in a way no army ever could. The Prime Director stood in her office overlooking Earth, her hands resting against the cold glass as she watched the sunrise paint the ocean's gold. It's over, her aide whispered behind her. The Council is gone. She didn't turn, her voice soft. No, the Council lives, just changed, just quieter, just wiser. She took a slow breath, her reflection faintly smiling. We don't want their obedience, we want their understanding. Outside, the sky was filled with faint glows as Terran fleets returned from the farthest sectors. Their missions complete, their silence deeper than ever, and from the moon came a slow hum as the veil began to power down for the first time, no longer hiding Earth, but revealing it to the stars again. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't hiding anymore. In the ruins of the Grand Chamber, the surviving Council delegates gathered for the first time in months. The once golden floor scorched black, the banners burned, and in the center of the room stood something new. A single crystal pedestal glowing faintly blue, projecting an image of the Terran emblem, a simple circle of light with two words beneath it, peace earned. None of the aliens dared to touch it, for they knew it was not a threat, but a promise. The Dranith representative, once the loudest voice of mockery, was now frail and trembling, his golden scales dulled with age and shame. They spared us, he said, his voice breaking. Why? The Varn elder answered softly, because they never hated us, they pitied us, and in that moment, the truth finally sank in. The humans had stopped pretending to be civilized not to destroy civilization, but to rebuild it. On the planet of Tharek, where the Terran emblem had once appeared above the city, life had begun again. Markets reopened, children played, and human and alien soldiers stood side by side, rebuilding homes from the rubble. One alien merchant handed a human worker a small flower carved from glass, saying, "You fixed what we broke." The humans smiled faintly. "We just remembered what we once were." And that small moment of kindness carried across the world like a whisper of hope, proof that humanity's wrath had never been about domination. It had been about restoration. Across the stars, more worlds lit their skies with blue beacons, symbols of unity, the same color as the light that once guided Terran-age ships before they were mocked, a color that now meant respect, peace, and warning all at once. Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his uniform dark, his eyes distant as he watched the fleets drifting home. "We could have ruled them all," an officer said quietly. The Admiral shook his head. "We already do, but not the way they think." His voice was calm, almost sad. "We rule through the memory of what we could do, not what we did." He turned toward the viewport, watching Earth's glow rise above the dark horizon. "That's the difference between us and them. They needed power to feel safe. We need peace to feel human." For the first time since the war began, he allowed himself to breathe, and in that breath, the weight of 1,000 ghosts finally lifted, because vengeance had not destroyed them, it had purified them. In the following weeks, transmissions began reaching Earth from surviving species across the galaxy. Messages not of surrender but of apology, of understanding, alien voices trembling as they spoke words humanity had waited centuries to hear. We see now that peace was not weakness, it was strength disguised. Forgive us, teach us what mercy truly means. And Earth responded with quiet grace, reopening embassies, restoring trade, sending aid again. This time without laughter to greet it. The same ships that once brought war now carried food, medicine, and light to the worlds that had mocked them. And every alien who saw a human ship descending from the sky bowed their head in respect, because they knew that behind those calm blue lights was a power greater than any weapon, the will to forgive after winning. But forgiveness did not erase the memory of what had happened, and humanity made sure it never would. Across every reclaimed world, monuments were built, simple towers of glass with names etched on their sides. The names of every Terran lost in the Council's cruelty, and beneath each one was a single inscription: mercy was not a mistake. Children from dozens of species visited those memorials, guided by human teachers who told them the story not as revenge, but as lesson, the story of how a civilization that mocked compassion nearly destroyed itself, and how the species it scorned rebuilt it from the ashes. In one of those classrooms, a young alien asked her teacher, "Why didn't humans kill us all when they could?" The old human smiled gently, "Because then we'd become what they thought we were." The girl tilted her head. "What's that?" "Savages," the teacher said softly. "We stopped pretending to be civilized only to remind them what true civilization looks like." The child didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway, and that small understanding was enough to carry the lesson forward into a quieter galaxy. And yet, far from the lights of civilization, in the cold edges of the universe, some of the human fleets did not return. They remained in the shadows, guardians unseen, silent watchers ensuring that the peace they built would never again be mocked. Their ships drifting through the dark like the ghosts of forgotten gods. Their presence a reminder to all who looked at the stars: Earth still remembers. Those who survived the cleansing told stories about seeing the black silhouettes of the Terran vessels passing in silence, massive and solemn, like angels carved from the void, protecting creation itself from its arrogance. Back on Earth, the Prime Director addressed her people from the steps of the rebuilt Terran Assembly, her voice broadcast across every world now linked under the new accord, her tone calm, strong, filled with the quiet fire that had guided humanity through the centuries. "We do not celebrate victory, because victory belongs to no one. We celebrate understanding, because it belongs to everyone." She paused, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of the sky. "The galaxy mocked our kindness, and we showed them what it cost. Now they call it strength, and that is enough. Let our children be kinder than we were, and wiser than those who forced us to change." The crowd fell silent, their eyes glistening. The world that once knelt before empires now stood as the silent conscience of the galaxy. And so the veil was lifted completely. The hidden became visible, the quiet became known, and for the first time in living memory, every star in the night sky blinked freely, without fear of being silenced. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, they had humbled it, and in doing so, they had saved it, because from that day forward, no one would ever mistake mercy for weakness again, and when travelers crossed the stars and passed near the Sol system, they always saw it the same way: a small blue world glowing brighter than any sun, surrounded by faint, invisible guardians, and they whispered in awe, "That's where civilization truly began." The stars burned quieter now, the war was over, but the memory of it lived inside every breath of the galaxy, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the calm before truth speaks its final words. Across countless worlds, rebuilding had begun, and among the ruins of old pride the name of humanity was spoken like a prayer and a warning both. Some said they were saviors, others said they were monsters, but everyone agreed. They had changed the meaning of civilization forever. The Grand Chamber was gone, reduced to dust and fragments of crystal, but on its ruins stood a monument of light, not built by humans, but by the hands of those who once mocked them. A ring of stone encircling a single flame that never went out, its inscription glowing softly in every known language: "Peace is not given, it is remembered." The galaxy finally understood what those words meant. That peace wasn't a weakness to laugh at. It was the only thing that kept destruction from coming back. On Earth, the oceans shimmered with clean light, the skies clear, cities rebuilt stronger. But the people didn't celebrate victory. They mourned the cost. Memorials lined every horizon, walls of glass with names of the lost, each one glowing faintly under the stars. Soldiers stood quietly before them, not in pride but reflection. Humanity had shown its strength, but now it faced its hardest task: remaining gentle after remembering its power. Prime Director Helena Varys walked through the Hall of Names, her hand brushing against the etched glass, her voice soft. "We didn't destroy them," she whispered. "We saved them from themselves." And she turned her eyes to the stars, whispering again, "And maybe from us too." She knew history would remember this age as humanity's awakening. But she hoped the future would remember it as the time they learned mercy was not surrender, it was control. In the far reaches of the Orion Rim, the last Terran fleets began returning home, engines whispering like waves in the dark. Ships that had carried out vengeance now drifted in formation, their lights dim, their hulls scarred but unbeaten. Aboard the flagship Retribution, Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge watching the stars fade into the warmth of Earth's sun, his crew silent around him. "What now, sir?" one of them asked quietly. Rourke took a slow breath, his voice low. "Now we rest, not because we are tired, but because the galaxy finally can." He looked out at the rising blue planet and added, "They'll call us conquerors, but all we ever wanted was to be heard." His words lingered like prayer in the quiet hum of the ship, and as Retribution descended toward Earth's orbit, a single blue light blinked on its hull, the universal signal of peace. Across the galaxy, life began again. Alien cities rebuilt their towers. Children who had once been taught to laugh at human weakness now played games where they pretended to be human explorers, brave and kind. Songs were written about the day the stars went silent, and preachers across worlds spoke of the Terrans as the guardians of balance. The ones who showed that civilization without heart was hollow, and heart without courage was helpless. Slowly, new trade routes opened, not under the rule of any council, but under the Accord, a pact of peace led by none, enforced by trust. Its symbol was a blue circle of light, the same that once marked human aid ships, now shared by all who remembered what happens when arrogance mocks mercy. In the quiet night above the moon, a human and a Varn elder met for the first official Accord summit. The alien's eyes glowed softly in the dim light as he bowed his head. "We thought we were above you once," he said. "But you were the only ones who remembered what it means to be below the stars, not above them." The human smiled faintly. "We just learned to listen to silence," he said, and together they watched Earth rise, its blue glow reflecting in their eyes, both species understanding that something greater than fear had been born between them, respect. But not all of humanity returned home. Some fleets remained in the dark, watching the far edges of the galaxy, not as conquerors but as sentinels, ensuring no empire ever forgot again. Their presence unseen, their engines quiet, known only in the rumors whispered in dark taverns and among traders who claimed to see shadows move across the stars. "The humans are still out there," they'd say, "watching, waiting, guarding." And every captain who heard that rumor made sure to fly with honor. Because everyone knew what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be civilized. The universe itself learned humility. On Earth's surface, in a small coastal village far from the cities, an old man sat by the water with his granddaughter, the waves glowing faintly under the moonlight. "Grandpa, were you in the war?" she asked. The man's eyes softened. "Yes, child," he said. "I saw the stars burn and the proud fall. I saw us stop pretending." She looked at him curiously. "Were we the good guys?" He smiled faintly. "We were the only ones who remembered that being good means knowing when to stop." The girl leaned against his shoulder. "Will they ever mock us again?" He looked at the horizon, where the faint lights of orbital ships moved like stars. "No," he said softly. "They won't need to, they've learned." As the night deepened, the sky above Earth shimmered faintly, a vast aurora dancing with blues and silvers, the remnants of the veil's energy folding back into the planet's magnetic field, and for a moment, it looked as if the whole world was wrapped in light, the galaxies beyond glowing brighter than ever, as though the universe itself bowed in quiet respect for the species that had taught it the greatest lesson of all, that kindness without strength invites cruelty, but strength guided by kindness creates eternity. And so the story of humanity became more than legend, it became a law of the stars, written not in conquest, but in conscience. From that day forward, whenever a new world joined the Accord, the first story they taught their children was of Earth. The planet that offered mercy to those who mocked it. The planet that stopped pretending to be civilized so that civilization could survive. And those centuries would pass and the faces of humanity would fade into history. Their light would remain, a small blue glow among infinite darkness, and every traveler who saw it whispered the same words in reverence. That's where mercy learned to roar.